sitting here wearing nothing but actually my Starfleet hoodie, which kind of looks like uniform. Most people have probably seen that picture of me wearing it, but maybe I'll take other pictures of me wearing it in the future. Of course, now I have a goatee. I think when I was originally wearing it, I didn't. Regardless, none of that matters. Woo! The Golden Stallion is here for December's Star Trek update. And this is one that this is an episode. We do these monthly where we just talk about all things Star Trek for a little while. And this is one I usually do towards the end of the month, mainly because of Discovery right now. Since Discovery, we want to try and review as many of the episodes as we can each Star Trek update that we do for the Sovryn Tech patrons. But interestingly, not unexpectedly, we knew this, but December has had no episodes of Star Trek Discovery. So we haven't had a new episode since middle of November. And of course, they will be starting back up in the first or second week of January, that we'll be getting back to what they're calling Chapter 2 of Season 1 of Star Trek Discovery. And we'll find out, what the hell, where did they end up when they last powered up the spore drive, blah, 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 blah. So that's, interesting stuff regardless. And I think trying to get into any kind of speculating or anything like that, I don't know, like that's something. And we've talked about this a lot when we do our Star Wars updates, or when I've reviewed Star Wars, or whenever Star Wars comes up in various Sovryn Tech material. I'm really trying to get out of the speculation game as far as with, a lot of these productions, certainly with Star Wars and maybe even Star Trek 2, because, they'll throw curveballs. It's funny. Ridley Scott, who is between him and Paul W.S. Anderson, they are my favorite directors in Hollywood. Just straight up. And Ridley Scott would probably take top marks. I think he's just phenomenal at everything he does. Really sad to hear that apparently Fox may be pulling any future Alien sequels. I enjoyed Alien Covenant. In fact, I got done reading the prequel to Alien Covenant. There was a prequel book that came out for it, and I thought that it was great, like what they laid out in it and everything. The movie Alien Covenant, which I've watched a few times now, becomes far more enjoyable when you read that origin book. But anyway, whatever. So Ridley Scott, he came out talking about The Last Jedi, and look, you can have all the problems in the world with some of Ridley Scott's films. Maybe you don't like, Exodus, was it Gods and Kings or whatever. Maybe you don't like, I don't know, pick some of the movies that he liked, or that he's made recently maybe, and that you didn't dig. Look, this is the guy that made Alien. This is the guy that made Blade Runner. Go down the fucking list. Gladiator, hello? For me, outside of science fiction, like the greatest film ever made, okay? This is a guy who, when he's talking and he's telling you how to make a movie, you fucking listen to him. Because obviously he has all the credibility in the world that anybody in the goddamn planet needs. Regardless of what you think about some of his more modern films or whatever, doesn't matter. This guy's got it. This guy obviously knows something. And he came out and said, he was talking about The Last Jedi. And really, he was actually talking about the recent Star Wars movies in general. And I think he was even speaking broadly about Hollywood in general today. And he was complaining about reshoots. Not that, reshoots mean that, the whole film has changed, blah, blah, none of that. He's like, what the hell is wrong with you people? He says, reshoots are so expensive. He says, Hollywood's just throwing away money when they're doing these reshoots. He says, because people asked him, would you ever want to direct a Star Wars movie? And he said, no way. He said, but if I did, I guarantee you it'd be under budget and it'd be done in pretty short order, because there wouldn't be any reshoots. He doesn't, he thinks all of that's just very lazy filmmaking. And I think he makes a great point on that. But there's this weird, I have to think that studios, television or film, I think that they are paying attention to public opinion, because public opinion is so out there now, so prevalent because of social media and whatever else, that now they feel like they have to really make very quick right angle changes to their productions, and they're willing to hash out the millions of dollars to do it. And sometimes these are positive, sometimes these are negative. I dare say probably most of the time that they're negative, because everything seems to be about playing it safe today. And I think even Star Trek Discovery, to some degree, is playing it a little safe on things. I don't know. We'll see. I know when they've said principal photography was wrapped up and all that stuff, but I could picture them shifting things and changing things based upon what Star Trek fans, Star Trek like podcasts and shows are speculating, write-ups and everything, what they're speculating about what's going to happen in Discovery, and they just want to fuck with people's heads, and that's getting really annoying. This directionless, TV making or show making and movie making and all that. I mean, this is really, really getting annoying, fast. So whatever. Anyway, I don't want to get much into the speculation game, at least not when it comes to, movies or television shows or things like that, because now I think it's to the point that, that studios just say, well, if they think this, we'll just fucking switch it on all of them. So I'm not going to bother speculating about, I've heard some really wild theories with what's going on in Star Trek Discovery. I've heard people say recently that, oh, well, what if Discovery becomes like Daniels and all the, like the USS Relativity, where they become kind of the time traveling Starfleet of the 26th or 29th century, depending on which version you want to go with. What if they become that, and that's why you never find out about the spore drive, because they become effectively the time police and all. I mean, there's all these wild ideas out there, and I'm just like, no. Like the Section 31 thing, I think there's still something to that. In fact, they've talked about a tease that they need to pay that they may never pay. In like the second episode of season 1 of Discovery, they mentioned the Starfleet officers that have the black badges. What the hell are those? What is that? Well, hopefully maybe soon we'll find out. Or maybe they'll just completely fucking ignore it, and that would almost be worse. Or I guess technically it was episode 3, because episode 2 was, Battle of the Binary Stars Part 2 or whatever. But whatever. Anyway, so we're not really here to talk about Star Trek Discovery. In fact, there hasn't been, there was supposed to be a new Light of Kahless comic, I thought, that came out at the end of December. It didn't. So, maybe they got pushed back a week or something like that. But we did talk about the first issue in November's Star Trek update. And, certainly it was interesting enough. It was like, okay, cool, we can do this. There won't be any Discovery tie-in novels. There have been 2 tie-in novels announced for 2018. There's going to be the one coming out in February, which I'm looking forward to that, because it has to do with a very young Captain Kirk, as well as Captain Lorca, or a younger Captain Lorca. And then there is a third book, though I don't think we have any details on what it's about exactly, but there's going to be a third book coming out in the fall of 2018 for Star Trek Discovery, which I think is great because, we're not going to see, after the second chapter of season 1, we're not going to see any new Discovery for over a year. At the earliest, it's going to be well over a year. So that's a long time. So if you can keep it on you got to keep this stuff on people's minds. The diehards. Look, you don't even have to. You don't even have to release trailers or anything for the diehards. The diehards are already looking. Okay, when's a new episode coming out? When's a new season starting up? They're already all over it. Okay, you got to keep it in the popular consciousness. If anything, it needs to be seen on the side of the binding of a book, in Walmart or something. I mean, like just to keep people kind of abreast, and keep it in their mind of what's going on. So I'm glad that there's at least a couple of those novels planned, because also, and as I understand it, now I know to some degree this is how, or I'm aware, I should say, that sometimes this is how the book industry, or the multimedia industry, I guess is maybe the best term, can work, to where you don't get announcements a year ahead of time, or a few months ahead of time, of when books are going to be coming out for a certain franchise or something like that, when there's like a regular churning out. Like with Star Trek novels, it's not uncommon for like new novels to come out every month, right? Well, the funny thing is, like, Simon & Schuster usually puts out an ad, or not an ad. They put out a spot, I guess I should say. They put out a spot that says, okay, this is all the books that are coming out for 2018. There's nothing. And I've talked to a couple people about it, and they said that this has only happened where there's no announcements for books. This only happened like once, and it was 15 years ago. Like there's always been, for decades, there's been this really steady stream of Star Trek novels, and you knew what was coming out. If anything, you at least knew the title and author. And there's nothing other than the Star Trek Discovery books, and there's the sequels to the Star Trek Titan books, which I read the first one. Was it Fire and Ice? Sorry, Fire with Fire. That's the name of the book. Which those are, that trilogy, the Prometheus trilogy, and it is going to be a whole trilogy, and all three of those books I think will be released in 2018. They're actually translations from Titan books, usually Star Trek books, and they've been this way for a long time. The bulk of it's Star Trek fiction books anyway, over the past 40, 50 years, have been from Simon & Schuster. 30 or 40 years, I should say. But these are from Titan books, and they're actually translations from like these books that were written in Germany and thus originally in German. So Fire with Fire, I thought it was actually a pretty cool book. I think the Prometheus is like one of the coolest ships ever made. That's the USS Prometheus that you see, was it Message in a Bottle? I think that was the name of the Voyager episode, something like that, where the original Prometheus showed up, and Andy Dick was the EMH on board, and they had to stop the Romulans from stealing it. And it's like this, warship that can split into three. Fire with Fire does a pretty cool job of spending a lot of times on the technical abilities of the Prometheus, because like the Prometheus has all this wild tech, like metaphasic shielding, right? Remember metaphasic shielding from season 6 of The Next Generation, where it could actually handle, kind of the corona or the ejections, from a star. These metaphasic shields are just wild. And so that's kind of cool. It definitely a book for if you love Star Trek technology. Fire with Fire, or Star Trek Prometheus, Fire with Fire, that's the full title, was a really cool read. The storyline, it has to do with kind of like terrorism of a sort. And the Prometheus, at least in this, this isn't exactly canon, but at least in this series, is in many ways the flagship for the Federation. And so, it's out in this wild area of space, which I like that. I like it when, especially like with, not necessarily, because this wouldn't really technically be tie-in material, but I like it when, say, a book, like either, it could be for any franchise, but where a book takes place, if it's something like Star Trek where you can go to different parts of a galaxy, or like Star Wars, you can go to like whole other parts of the galaxy, and you can have completely separate adventures that could never really touch anything that's happening in the mainstream stuff, like say Star Trek Discovery, Next Gen, or whatever like that, right? This is something that Peter David did with his excellent, top-notch Star Trek book series called New Frontier, Star Trek New Frontier, that went, almost 30 books. Like with that, he made it all in a very specific part of space that they were patrolling. That way, if you wanted, you could almost consider them canon, and you could kind of, because it wouldn't interfere with anything that you saw on TV. So it could fit in with, it could be considered a tie-in if you wanted it to be, because it's all in the separate area. And the Prometheus books do the same, or at least this one does the same thing, where it's in a very specific area of space dealing with a very specific problem. A new race and everything that wouldn't interfere with anything going on, in Star Trek proper, shall we say. So I enjoyed it, not the greatest read on planet Earth, but I thought it was fine, and I'm curious to see how the trilogy kind of fills out, which that'll be done by end of 2018. So anyway, so you have the Discovery, those 2 Discovery books, you have the 2 more Star Trek Prometheus books, but that's about it that's on the dock as far as like what's been announced that'll get released. And again, as I've been informed, usually a year, even 2 years ahead of time of books that'll be coming out, and there's nothing. There's a ton of end of 2017, so it's almost weird. It's almost like they're clearing like I don't know, clearing out a backlog of some kind, because end of 2017 there was the Star Trek Book of Lists, which I checked that out, which whatever, it's exactly what you think it is. It's a book of lists and has some interesting canon information in it. But then there was that the art book of the Kelvin timeline, which was beautiful, actually. But if you had the previous Art of Star Trek from 2009, a lot of rehashed material in it. But that's a gorgeous book. And then there was the makeup of Star Trek Beyond, or the makeup of kind of the Kelvin timeline. Like there were a ton of Star Trek reference books, especially, that came out just in the past 2-3 months. okay, at the end of 2017. And there was a new Titan book and all that. I mean, so, there's been a lot of stuff, but then like 2018, there's nothing. Like, couldn't they have saved some of these books for 2018? It's just, I don't know. It's kind of it's an oddity. It's very, very strange. So anyway, we'll talk about, let's move on from talking about the novels. Obviously we'll review them as they come out, but so Star Trek Boldly Go, which is one of my favorite comic series running right now. It was actually my comic pick of 2016. This is the comic series that is a direct sequel to Star Trek Beyond the movie, which I thought was, great. Yes, because I really enjoyed it. Actually, Star Trek Beyond was my movie pick of 2016 as well. I thought it was so great. I mean, everything around that film was just so solid. Well, the only thing that wasn't solid about Star Trek Beyond was obviously the marketing machine around it, like completely dropped the ball, because this was a great movie, in every sense of the word. And the soundtrack's phenomenal. Everything. I mean, there was just so much cool shit that you finally got to see in that. And that it delivered on, and you got to the point. It's the third movie, so you got to the point where you're really invested, I think, in what is, in the portrayals. Say Zachary Quinto's portrayal of Spock, Christopher Pine's portrayal of Kirk, and all that. You're finally invested in it, and so you get to really enjoy it. And and it was so cool. But God damn it, it just didn't have a great marketing machine around it. They completely dropped the ball as far as that goes. But Star Trek Boldly Go has been just a phenomenal comic series, and the recent story arc that they've been running with, which is called IDIC, 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 Infinite Diversity and Infinite Combinations, is where they are, like all of these different crews of the Enterprise are encountering each other from all these different universes, are like kind of coming together and encountering each other and dealing with various things. And the second issue, not a whole lot exactly happens in it. You get a little more experience with who you find out ends up being a descendant of Khan Noonien Singh, and it's a woman, and she's like ruling the Earth. You get a little bit of that, but there's not a whole lot added on, so I can't give like a big review of it. I mean, I think it's to the point that maybe we'll have to wait for, when I think it's going to be a four-part series in Star Trek Boldly Go. But maybe we'll have to wait until like the rest of the parts come out to really give it a review, because this was definitely like a bridge story, not bridges in like the Bridge of the Enterprise, but bridges in between points, where you get to things. But you meet. I mean, it's such a fun comic though, because there's the metallic, or there's like the android crew of the Enterprise, where they have the designations of I'm Uhura one, model number 1701 or something like that. Then there's like the plant versions. Like literally they're plants. Like it's a plant version of Captain Kirk. It's really wild. But Star Trek Boldly Go is still, again, rock solid, just very enjoyable comic book every month that they keep putting out. There's also Star Trek New Visions, which I haven't reviewed that, and I haven't gotten to reviewing Star Trek Waypoint yet. Both of those I do want to get into a deeper review on a future Star Trek update, and we certainly will. So, but speaking of the Kelvin timeline, something that I knew was, here's something I did predict, and of course this is business-wise, not anything to do with what's happening in universe with Star Trek. But I had said that, and this was, a year ago, I said, well, you've got Star Trek Discovery coming out. They're going to hold off on making any announcements about Star Trek 4, that being the fourth movie, perhaps, in the Kelvin timeline. They're going to hold off on talking about that, until Star Trek Discovery's out there and everything. Just like, with Star Wars. Sure, we've got, the Han Solo movie is coming out in just a few months. Like, it's literally coming out in 5 months. That's it. But wouldn't you think that, well, like most Star Wars movies, you're getting trailers like a year out or something, you're getting all this kind of information, whatever. No, because, they got to make sure that episode 8 gets all the attention that it needs, and makes the most money that it can. Then once that kind of, once the fervor around that kind of dies down, well, then you can start talking about the Solo movie. Not to get into Star Wars on a Star Trek update, but like, I kind of feel like this movie should have been maybe direct to video. I don't know. I'm starting to fall into that camp where, like, this movie's completely unnecessary. Like a Han Solo prequel, come on, Well, if we get a Luke Skywalker prequel next year, then or in a couple of years, maybe that'll all make sense. But Not that I want a prequel to A New Hope. I want Luke Skywalker as in a prequel to The Last Jedi, where, you know, we've got him between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens, but whatever. Anyway, so not to get on that, but, you know, this is what I said. It's like, as soon as Star Trek Discovery, you know, starts running, then you'll start getting announcements about what's going to happen with Star Trek 4. Okay. And that's exactly what happened. In fact, ironically, it's all of this news that's coming out now is coming out while Star Trek Discovery is on hiatus. A perfect time. Like I was just saying, you got to have people keep thinking about your franchise. You got to have people keep thinking about what's going on for you. Okay? Like, it benefits Star Trek Discovery while it's off air, you know, while it's in a mid-season break, to be talking about the movie. You know, what are we going to do about the next Star Trek movie? Okay? And so the news finally came out. Of course, you know, a lot of it's very weird. I mean, it's very weird news. So first it was a rumor that Quentin Tarantino, yes, that Quentin Tarantino, the one and only, that Quentin Tarantino was going to be making a Star Trek movie, that he was talking to Paramount. At first it was just rumor. Then suddenly you find out, no, yeah, he sat down with Paramount, and Paramount said, yeah, this sounds good. Let's go forward. And so they are going forward. Now, we don't know that Tarantino's going to direct it. He's definitely going to produce it. J.J. Abrams is also definitely going to produce it, just as he's done for the past 3 films, okay, that exist within the Kelvin timeline, which, if J.J. Abrams is producing it, it's a pretty good bet that, yes, this is going to be another Kelvin timeline film. There's a chance that maybe it's going to be a completely new continuity. I could imagine that, but I think even with Tarantino at the helm, that would be a mistake, unless they're going to do some kind of a prequel. Like, there was... So originally, you know, I don't know how many people realize this. In fact, it'd be interesting to go down the list of all of these. But there was a time frame after Star Trek Nemesis effectively failed, even though I really like that movie. In fact, it's even better if you can ever, like, add in all the deleted scenes. I've yet to find a fan edit where somebody just put in all those deleted scenes and made it one long movie, because it's a lot cooler when you even know about the deleted scenes from that. But anyway, maybe someone out there knows where I could find that, and if it is, you know, let me know. But anyway, so you had like a good 7 or so years, whatever, where, you know, there was no Star Trek in theaters, and that was kind of weird, because since 1979 there had been Star Trek in theaters. You know, from 1979 to 2002, you know, you were guaranteed every 3 or 4 years, whatever, that okay, yeah, there's going to be a new Star Trek movie in theaters, and that was always very comforting, right? So there was like 7 years where there wasn't any, but it wasn't because, and then of course you had, you know, Enterprise got canceled in 2005. You know, and so you had a few years where there's no new Star Trek, and people are like, oh, wow, what the fuck, you know, and everybody's like, oh no, well, the franchise needs to take a rest, blah, blah, blah. And of course, really it didn't. Maybe just I didn't think it needed to take a rest. I didn't think it needed reinvigoration, but for a lot of the populace, sure, maybe it needed some kind of reinvigoration, which is what J.J. Abrams brought to the table with the latest, with the Star Trek film, you know, with 2009 Star Trek. But between that time frame, there were a lot of talks of a lot of different movies and TV shows that were being pitched, between Paramount and CBS and all that, as far as where they wanted to go with this. One of them was about one of Kirk's ancestors. Okay, like would be, let's see, that'd be the 22nd century. There would be like a 22nd century, like I think his name was literally his name was Tiberius Kirk, and that's who James, you know, with his middle name T, James Tiberius Kirk would be kind of named after. And it sounded like that. I mean, that pitch for a movie actually went pretty far, and I think there was quite a bit of script written for it too, or at least a story treatment, which is usually a precursor to a full-on script. And that went pretty far. So maybe Tarantino wants to make that, because that was supposed to be a very sexy and dark film. Obviously, two things that Tarantino could deliver with aplomb. So I don't know if that's they might go that direction. It might not end up being like a Star Trek 4 with Christopher Pine, Zachary Quinto, you know, and all the rest of them. Okay, I hope it is. That's the direction I want it to go, but we just don't know. We don't know what, nobody has, even though we know that Paramount loved whatever the fuck Tarantino pitched to them, we have no idea what that is. We just don't. So, I mean, you can imagine some things that Tarantino would want to put out there, but who the hell knows? And we know he loves the original series, so why not use, you know, this well-established, reimagination of the original series? That's just a guess on my part, but I think it makes sense. So anyway, now not just that, but also, and this just kind of adds on to the oddity of it all. But they got Mark L. Smith to be the writer for the film. So obviously Tarantino will have his hands in the writing of this, but the main screenwriter will be Mark L. Smith. Now, Mark L. Smith is a name some people may know, maybe you don't, but he did what I consider one of the best films in recent memory, that being The Revenant. And this is a long-ass movie, and you'd think it's a movie you couldn't watch more than once. I can watch The Revenant over and over again. That is just a captivating film. And a lot of it, and how you can write that thing, because there's so little dialogue and all that. I mean, that's tremendous imagination. Mark L. Smith, obviously a ton of talent. Of course, he also did the Vacancy movies. There was the first Vacancy film. Those are horror films. The first one had Kate Beckinsale in it, which was fantastic. And then I think the second one, he wrote that as well. But that was like direct to video. But anyway, Mark L. Smith, this guy's got it. He has the talent. He can obviously pen a great movie. So it's a weird pick. You think The Revenant, or even like a guy who has a history of writing, horror films, going into Star Trek. Yeah, that's kind of fucking strange. But, well, I'll tell you, where it wouldn't be strange? If it's a Borg film. That could be really, really wild. In fact, in Star Trek Boldly Go, which is, again, a sequel to Star Trek Beyond, the movie, they've already started to encounter the Borg, but in this case in the 23rd century instead of in Picard's time in the 24th century. So I could picture and understand, like the Star Trek comics from IDW that deal in the Kelvin timeline are more or less canon. Like, they're tie-in material, and they get referenced in the movies themselves. Most people don't realize that. I bring it up every moment I can, because it's like, no, look, what happens in these comics actually has weight. In fact, they do a much better job of it than Star Wars does by leaps and bounds. So, or Lucasfilm. So anyway, Star Trek 4, it's happening. The news is starting to come out. These are big names. This is weighty shit. Like, if you were trying to finally, have Star Trek get some kind of serious Academy Award or something, outside of like special effects or makeup or score. Yeah, this is about the direction you'd go. You'd have to do something so outlandish, like Quentin Tarantino, like getting Mark L. Smith, which The Revenant, I think that took Best Picture, if I remember correctly. If it didn't, it deserved it. I think I love that movie. Just a fantastic film. And I'm not a DiCaprio fan at all. Quite the opposite, in fact. But that movie just fucking hit. Man, awesome. So, weird. That's the word for this. I don't know what the hell this is going to end up looking like, but I am all for that. I love the idea of way more than I'm much more amenable to it with Star Trek than I am with Star Wars. I love the idea of Star Trek going in, new directions. You want to talk about bold, right? Everybody says, oh boy, Rian Johnson was so bold. Well, Star Trek, it's in the fucking monikers, to boldly go. Well, let's boldly go where this franchise has never gone before. I am all for it. That's what I loved about Nemesis, and I think that's what a lot of people didn't like about it, is it had a very different feel. It had a dark feel to it. No, let's do the dark. Let's go for it. There's other problems with Nemesis that people have, and I get it. Okay, believe me, I totally understand the critiques against that film. I enjoyed it for its boldness, frankly, and I think I could enjoy this film for its boldness. Quentin Tarantino, not a fan of every one of his movies. Probably Jackie Brown's probably my favorite. Pam Grier in that. Jeez, man, that's some good shit. I love that film. So, if we get Jackie Brown in space, you heard us going, hog wild, please. I'll take that in a heartbeat. And Zoe Saldana can pull it off. That is an actress that she can do action. So, hey, there we go. Jackie Brown in space. I'm there. I'm sold. I'm all for it. So that's some interesting news. That's pretty much the only big news coming out of Star Trek, really. And it's huge news. Anytime Tarantino wants to make something, he has some movie. He's got some movie about the Manson murders or something, I think, coming out in, is that in 2019 that Sony pitched him for? That's coming. But anyway, if after that in 2020 or 2021, we're getting this hot and happening Star Trek 4, please, I'm there. Or even if they want to do something, earlier. In fact, I think I'll line that up in the future. I'll mark it down to talk about all of these different Star Trek series ideas that were being taken very seriously. Even J. Michael Straczynski had one who, JMS is God. Babylon 5, greatest show ever made. I say that every time on Star Trek on Sovereign Tech Prime. So yeah, some of those could be really, really cool to explore, and I wouldn't mind talking about them. So we're going to make that happen. But instead, so getting away from the Star Trek news that's out there, and again, there's not a whole lot. Well, I guess I'll also say, so finally we did get, because I've been clamoring about this for a long time on Star Trek updates. Finally we did, on December 15th, we did get an official Star Trek Discovery soundtrack release. Now, it was only digital first, and then I think in January 2018 they will release physical copies of it. I don't mind if it's digital. I'm totally okay with MP3s. I understand why people want, better quality or, whatever their mindset is around that, and I love reading liner notes too. But this is, the soundtrack is interesting, and boy, you fucking notice, because we've talked about this with Discovery, how subdued the music is. And that's uncanny for Star Trek. Think of Star Trek Beyond. Listen to, especially if you well, I think they might be sold out because they only make like 3,000 units and they don't release it digitally. But there's the deluxe edition of the soundtrack for Star Trek Beyond, which obviously I happen to have I bought a copy as soon as I found out about it. That's really bombastic, really intense. There's a lot going on in that score. The Star Trek Discovery soundtrack, Jeff Russo is the composer, very subdued, and I was hoping that, maybe we'll find some hints here and there, outside of, when you get to listen to it independently, because sometimes there's some really beautiful things that go on that what's happening on screen kind of, takes your attention away from what the music, from the story that the music is telling. No, this is incredibly subdued. There's nothing grand really going on here. In fact, there's even the last track on it is an extended theme of the main Star Trek Discovery theme, which I've gotten used to, even though I still hate its Game of Thrones kind of undertones. But the extended theme version, I was like, this is it just doesn't excite me. Look, I'm enjoying the fuck out of Star Trek Discovery. I love it. I pre-ordered from Eagle Moss, which they make they have like their monthly subscription of Star Trek ships and everything. Now they're getting to the point where they're making special edition ones where they're larger, or they even make XL models of these little, or not so little, because the XL models are actually 10 inches as compared to where the originals I think were like 5 or 6, and then they'd have the special editions that were like 8-inch models. Like I have the special edition, which I talked about in the last Star Trek update. I have the special edition of the refitted NX-01 Enterprise. But anyway, I already pre-ordered the Discovery. They're releasing the Shenzhou and the Discovery, and I was like, I want the Discovery model now. So that's coming out in January, I think. So look, I love Discovery. I love it. I'm just saying the music is not impressive at all, and that's really shocking to say, because I've bought Star Trek soundtracks since I was a kid. Literally since I was a kid, I've been buying these soundtracks back with the old GNP Crescendo releases, or even when Voyager came out, you had, the only Voyager soundtrack we had for a long time until that 4-disc set came out from La La Land Records was the release also from Crescendo, which was for Caretaker. The first episode by Jay Chataway, but that was a phenomenal score. That was great. And yeah, there was the best of Star Trek, the 2 volumes of that. They had a lot of Voyager music in it as well, and those were really enjoyable. Okay, but yeah, I don't know. I was really underwhelmed listening to this, and I can't picture that I'm going to listen to it this often, especially when, we talked about how Cliff Idleman, kind of put it out there that Cliff Idleman did the score for Star Trek VI, which is a fantastic score. Talk about bombastic. He had recommended, or he had put it forward to, or maybe Nick Meyer reached out to him. I forget which direction it went. But anyway, they said, yeah, would you like to score Star Trek Discovery? And he released, he did a demo, more or less an EP of music that he sent to Nick Meyer and, in CBS, and said, hey, this is what I got. If you want to rock and roll with it, and use it for Star Trek Discovery and have me come on board, I'd love to do the work. And that you can buy digitally, even you can buy that 4-track album. We talked about it in the November update for the November Star Trek update. You can get that, and that music's awesome. And it's a way better, even those 4 tracks are way better than just about anything that was put out in this official release for Star Trek Discovery and done by Jeff Russo. I'm not knocking Jeff Russo. I'm sure he's great, okay? But shit, this is very, very odd. You know, maybe it'll all change. Maybe they don't want to bring in more independent themes and they want to rely more on cues from, say, the original series or something, you know, from the music of Alexander Courage and so on. Maybe that's the deal. I don't know. There's got to be a reason behind this, but I find the really subdued music, that's the most jarring thing about Star Trek Discovery. That's the thing that most makes it not feel like Star Trek. Otherwise, I think everything's fine. I don't care if they say fuck. I don't care about all the wild shit that they do. But the music being really, really toned down is that it's missing something. And that, granted, this is a trend that goes across television today, where the music is all very subdued. And this might even be something where I think they may be copying Game of Thrones quite a bit, because in Game of Thrones, granted, I haven't watched recent seasons and I never will because the show's so terrible, but like the first couple seasons, you know, the music, other than the main theme, which is very catchy, albeit toned down, yeah, I don't remember much of the music. And I'm a guy that pays very close attention to music, so I should remember if it was something that special. But whatever, that's how it goes. So Jeff Russo, yeah, so very, very disappointed. Fortunately, well, not disappointed. I mean, it's serviceable, but that's it. It's just serviceable. It's not memorable. It doesn't like get you. I mean, even like little episodes of like Voyager. What was the episode? It was in season 1. It was the episode where the Doctor takes on the Grendel. It was like not Heroes and Demons. I don't think that was the name of that was the name of the episode, but it was something like that. In the Best of Star Trek Volume 1, they have some of the musical cues from that episode. Just one episode. And this is the only time you ever hear these musical cues. But there's these awesome, like, you know, really almost cheesy, heroic musical cues, you know, because the Doctor's about to take on what is perceived on the holodeck as this, you know, monster. You know, this is almost a dragon or something like that. And because they're playing out, you know, the ancient Beowulf poem. And so just like one little episode could have the, you know, this awesome, like, heroic theme that never gets used again, but there it is. And like, why couldn't you get any of that in Discovery? I was really disappointed, but I guess it's good to listen to in the background while you're working or something. How about that? Anyway, so fortunately there is some saving grace for this. And that came in, and this is the last thing we're really gonna talk about. On Calendar or Saturnalia, really it's Calendar, though those are kind of adjoining festivals. Of course, I mean Christmas, but on Sovereign Tech, we don't like to make things easy. So on Christmas, or just a couple days before, Star Trek Continues, the production team behind Star Trek Continues, of course, Vic Mignogna and all of them, they released, and I have a link in the show notes for this, they released, because Star Trek Continues, which we did the review of the last episode in the November Star Trek Update, that being To Boldly Go Part 1 and 2, which was fucking awesome. Like, crazy awesome. What the hell? Like, they had no right to be that damned good, you know, especially when it's such an independent production. But anyway, not that I expect anything less from Star Trek Continues, but they released, they put out a website, and the website, the full URL is actually pretty easy. StarTrekContinues.com/downloads.html. When you go there, when you go to that site, you will get links to torrents for either, and it'll be 4 discs. Either way you go about it, you can get the disc images, ISO files, for either the DVDs or the Blu-rays. Okay. So you can get, because there's 11 episodes. And so there's volume 1, volume 2, volume 3, volume 4, and it'll give you a link to the torrents for each of those. Now, when this first went up, they were just hosting it on their servers, and I don't think they realized how many people would want this, because the site went down almost instantly, and they couldn't keep up with the traffic for it. So after about a week, they're like, okay, well, now we figured out, we had somebody in our team, we figured out how to get the stuff set up as torrents, and now you can just, you can torrent, the Blu-ray images, disc images, or the DVD disc images, all you want. And not only that, so because, and they say right on the page that they can't they can't legally sell this, so they're just going to make it available. And if you want to make a beautiful box set out of Star Trek Continues, out of those 11 episodes, here, we've given you all the materials to do that. And they've really done a top-notch job. Okay. Like there's also, they have all of the posters that were made available, or that were made for each episode, you know, kind of like cover art, as it were. They do also offer like case artwork that you can put on, say, like a Blu-ray or DVD case, and you can print out and use that for each volume. So they did that right. Then again, like I said, they have all the posters that you could also get professionally printed out if you wanted to. Because, I mean, really, they can't make money off of doing this. Okay. They got lucky enough that, and I think it's because it was so popular, Star Trek Continues got lucky enough to finish out what they were doing when the hammer came down from Paramount and CBS, and then by, you know, the force of the U.S. government, to say, like, you know, you can't make productions like this anymore. You can't do Kickstarter funding for this kind of stuff anymore, blah, 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 blah. Or not that you can't do Kickstarter funding, but it all has to be very particular in how it's made. But anyway, so they're just giving you all this material, and if you want to spend the money to get it printed out or whatever, you go right ahead. And I think this is just the coolest thing for them to do. I think this is just wild. So, but not just the posters. So you can download all the posters, and you get it. You can, and they're in resolutions where they can be professionally printed and hung up. I mean, I'm half tempted to do some of them. Some of the artwork, especially like for episode 11 and the Lolani artwork and all that, it's stunning stuff. Not only that, but then also all the shooting scripts for all 11 episodes, and I think the vignettes too, because there's like 3 vignettes that take place right after Turnabout. Was it Turnabout Intruder? Is that the last episode of season 3 of the original series? So you get all the shooting scripts. You can read all of those. You can collect all of those. And then, this is the real gift. Okay, I mean, having the Blu-rays or being able to make Blu-rays, which I did, I'll talk about that in a minute, is great. But the real gift is they made available, and clearly they must have had this planned out, that they were hoping they could sell this, or they could make it as like rewards for Kickstarter backers or something like this. But then because of the, you know, various legal situations that happened around Star Trek fan work, I guess I'll say, because of Paramount and CBS, you know, and Axanar, we've covered that on Sovereign Tech Prime episodes. It was that big of a deal. You know, they can't sell it, but they put together 2 stunning albums. And these are full albums with, you know, 20, 30 tracks on them of the music for the episodes of Star Trek Continues, from episode 1 all the way to episode 11. And the music in this, I think it was Andy Farber, and actually Vic Mignogna, who played, of course, Captain Kirk and was kind of the main guy helming the entire Star Trek Continues production. He also composed music for that. What a guy! I like that. I like that when there's a guy out there who can act, direct, because he does that too. He can act, you know, he's playing the lead character. He's directing. He does that too. He can, you know, he helps out with special effects, does all this stuff, writes the music, writes the episodes. I mean, you know, act, write, direct. I mean, does the whole thing. Like, that's my kind of creator. That's the kind of person I always strive to be, where I'm literally doing everything. I'm writing, directing, you know, acting, whatever, you know, making my own music, which I do make my own music, of course. Go to audiooftheancients.xyz and you can buy it. You know, like I think that's so badass that he did this, and it shows how passionate he is about this, and that's what I think maybe the secret sauce of why Star Trek Continues stands such a cut above any other fan film or independent work done for any franchise, bar none. So anyway, so there's the music of Star Trek Continues, which is the first collection, and then the second collection is more music of Star Trek Continues. Believe it or not, the second disc is the real winner here. And Andy Farber, who I think is the main composer for this. Now they did, you know, copy a lot of, or, you know, reuse a lot of Alexander Courage's work from the original series, which only makes sense because the purpose of Star Trek Continues was, again, to be like a season 4 and to be a bridge between season 3 of Star Trek, the original series, and Star Trek, the motion picture, right? So they borrowed a lot of cues from the original series. And then, as we talked about in our review of To Boldly Go Part 1 and 2, they borrowed a lot of cues from Jerry Goldsmith's score in a very unique score from Star Trek, the motion picture, which also happens to be one of the greatest scores ever. Star Trek or not. So you get a lot of like rehash of like Alexander Courage kind of sounds and sounds that you recognize, but there's a lot of unique stuff in this, and it is awesome. Like Andy Farber, nice work, man. You got it. Like you clearly understood Star Trek, the tone of Star Trek music, and it just delivers. In fact, on the second disc, or on the second volume, there is, towards the end, there's a track called Kirk's Theme. And it is just, it's pure Star Trek. It's original and it's beautiful. It kind of sounds like, I think Jay Chataway did, or maybe it was Dennis McCarthy that did the main theme for Star Trek Voyager, whatever. It kind of sounds like the Voyager theme, which is fine. Like, that's cool to have that attachment in Star Trek music. But it is, and it also has like kind of a similar pattern to Archer's theme that Dennis McCarthy did for Star Trek Enterprise. But it's so epic, and it's like, yeah, that would be Kirk's theme, and it just works. And I mean, you can listen to these soundtracks, stem to stern all day. And it's such a gift. It is such a gift to have these totally for free. I would have gladly hashed out $20-$40, whatever. Because I buy music really all the time. I mean, all the time. I would have paid for these in a heartbeat. And it's a shame that they couldn't put it out there. Like there's that Star Wars fan film that was made. What was it? Way to the Rebellion. They sold the soundtrack for that. Of course, granted, it was all original music, and since maybe this has some, not so original compositions in it, maybe that's why they couldn't sell it. But what a shame, because these guys, they fucking deserve some money for the music alone that they did. Really impressive. But you can download them for free. Like I said, links are in the show notes for this. So myself, I made. As soon as I saw this, I was like, oh, holy shit, this is great. And it just so happened, and of course, a lot of people loved it when I was talking about this. It just so happened that I recently acquired a Blu-ray, a USB Blu-ray disc, burner, as to where before I only had like a DVD burner. But a Blu-ray burner that can actually burn M-discs, which we've talked about M-discs many times. These are the discs that supposedly last for like 1,000 years. They're literally made out of stone. But, you need a special writer to make an M-disc, but any Blu-ray drive or DVD drive can read an M-disc in their respective formats, Blu-ray or DVD. And I was like, oh, well, I have this Blu-ray drive. Why don't I order some Blu-ray M-discs, and let's make Star Trek Continues last for 1,000 years. And that's what I did. And I bought like a case, on Amazon. They had a case that can hold like a box set that can hold 6 discs in it. And this only comprised 4 discs, but I made a 5th disc that had like the 2 soundtracks. They had all the posters, all the shooting scripts, and some other stuff, extraneous material that I wanted on there. And I just put it all onto this, onto an M-disc DVD instead of wasting, what is otherwise what is comparatively inexpensive M-disc Blu-ray, writable Blu-ray. And so I have this gorgeous 5-disc set, do a printout and everything, make it all look nice of Star Trek Continues. And obviously, after I burned them, I'm like, okay, well, we got to watch these, got to make sure that these turned out right. And they did a phenomenal job. I mean, very simple menu system, but I've noticed most Blu-rays these days have very simple menu systems, which is a lost art. I've talked about it many times on Sovereign Tech Prime, where, it used to be that, with DVDs, like there were these major productions, how the menus looked and everything, right? Because they wanted to try and sell you the DVD, and sometimes the menus were mini movies in themselves, just the menu. Like the menu, if you have Star Trek the Motion Picture, if you have the original, not the original, if you have the director's cut DVD release of that, which is a 2-disc release, beautiful. In fact, it's the only way that director's cut's been released to date. I can't wait for the Blu-ray to come out, but let's get with it, people. Fucking come on. But like the menu system in that was stunning. Like, you get to see inside of V'ger. It's going all around all the place. I mean, there's sounds and music and everything. You're on the bridge of the the end of the refitted 1701. I mean, it's stunning. So that's a lost art. Whatever. They didn't make really great menus out of this. That's fine. It doesn't need to be. Bottom line is, in 1080p, it's fucking gorgeous. Okay, even when you put it on a 4K converter, it looks great. They really did phenomenal work visually on this show. And when you finally get to see it in all that grandeur on a big screen and everything, if before you'd only watched it on your laptop or something, wow, is it there. And it's so nice to have it on Blu-rays, especially MDisc Blu-rays, right? Because they're practically indestructible. I'm so pleased with this. This is an absolute gift to Star Trek fans, because this show, I mean, and we reviewed it in the last Star Trek update that we did on Patreon. It even includes Discovery in its canon, right? I mean, this is an up-to-date, this show, you can treat it if you want to. You can treat it, yeah, this is how it went down. This is what happened, because it leads right up to at least the stylings that you meet in Star Trek the Motion Picture. But there's the point where Kirk is walking around in Admiral Nagura's office, and there's all the different ship models, like admirals are wont to have in their office, and one of the ship models was the Discovery. Nice touch. Way to keep it really up to date. I thought that was so cool. So yeah, Star Trek Continues, definitely one of the greatest. I mean, it's a great Star Trek, especially that two-parter, To Boldly Go. I mean, I think the episodes, Lilani, Fairest of Them All was pretty good, but Lilani, Fairest of Them All, and but what was the name of the Pilgrim of Eternity? That was the first episode that they did. That was really rock solid. But those, those 4 or so episodes, I guess that'd be 5 technically. Those 5 episodes, I mean, are just some of the best Star Trek ever made, just straight up, and for it to be an independent production, that's absolutely amazing. So link is in the show notes to get your hands on all this, and I recommend you do. It is well worth it, even if you just go for the DVDs. You don't have to. It's supposed to look like the original series, and so what the hell? But it's I mean, just stunning how it looks, especially on Blu-ray. It is amazing. I am so glad that that the fortuitousness of ending up with a Blu-ray burner to where I could really make that happen. So do check out Star Trek Continues. Again, StarTrekContinues.com/downloads.html. Link is in the show notes as well. But that, I mean, if you're waiting for Discovery, and if you're familiar with the original series and Star Trek the Motion Picture, which I recommend both people do, that's like the Star Trek that most people kind of ignore. Is some people don't want to watch the old Star Trek. They don't want to watch they don't want to watch something old, so they don't watch the original series, and they think maybe that the motion picture is boring, which I completely disagree with. But anyway, most people skip that. Give those a watch, then watch Star Trek Continues, and you're just going to see something magical, in my opinion. You really are. It's so cool. So that's about really that whole Star Trek Continues release. That whole website and everything that they made available there. The shooting scripts, the posters, the music, especially the fucking music is fucking amazing. And then all the Blu-rays and whatever else that you can download totally for free. I mean, I think that's the best thing that happened to Star Trek in a long, long time. It's better than Discovery. It just is. It's better than Discovery. It's better than anything in the Kelvin timeline. It's so good. It's so enjoyable. So pays so much fidelity to Star Trek, and you can really tell, especially when you listen to the music and the music alone. It's so there. It's really cool. So do check that out. Anyway, that's it for December's Star Trek update. This is getting released, of course, on December 31st, 2017. So I will say to you now, Happy New Year. I hope that Star Trek does very well in 2018 with whatever the hell that it's going to do. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of news to come out, and we'll have things to talk about every month. Don't worry about that. Even if we have to do some deep cuts and maybe do some old reviews and everything, or not old reviews, but do reviews of things from Star Trek's past. I think that'd be a lot of fun. So 2018 is going to be an exciting year for Sovryn Tech and Star Trek as well. But anyway, Happy New Year to all of you. I love you. You know I do, and I mean that. Thank you to everybody who was a patron, either was or is or has been for a very long time, a patron of Sovryn Tech. 2018 is going to be an amazing year for the show. We're rocking our 6th year here, and I think, I just can't wait. All the things that I'm going to, especially for the patrons, all the things that's going to be coming out. I think you're really going to love it. At least I know I would love it, and that's why I make things. And fortunately, it seems like there's a lot of people out there who love what I put out there anyway. They may not share my love for everything that I love, but they love what I put out there. So if you love what I put out there, you're going to fucking love 2018. So Happy New Year, everybody, and I will see you on the other side. Woo!